Kevin Green, it is bull versus bear time. So before we get to your example trades, we got to get your thoughts on Nvidia. I know we were talking all about the Mag 7, but we didn't get into this one. KG, I'll start with you. Your take.
Look, I mean, Nvidia has been basing out and now attempting a breakout here. The base has been 7 months, 8 months or so, very wide base there. And now he's trying to make a move to the upside, see a breakout, and then trying to come back and retest a key moving average. I think this company, from a fundamental standpoint, still shows some pretty good strength here when it comes to the industry. This is, once again, that daily chart. We have a breakout to the upside coming back, and look where we are at today. Testing the 20-day moving average. We consolidate here, continue to break higher, and you can look at that $227 to $230 level as your next major area of resistance. That's just pretty much the range that we've seen since that consolidation. But you do have the MACD kind of crossing in a bearish formation. But if you go to the weekly chart still says that it's bullish. So maybe we have another pullback next week, consolidate, break higher. I think they have the, obviously they have the technology and the innovation to really try to outpace the competitors that are out there. They have been able to hold those margins. They continue to have these really strong relationships. Even though we have some circular financing, which I'm not a fan of, it seems to be working at least for them. So the worst thing that you could see is a breakdown, going back within that channel, and then breaking lower. I think if that does occur, the broader market's also doing a pullback as well. But from a fundamental standpoint, out of sight, out of mind, I think is the best thing for this name. It doesn't really actually react pretty well when it comes to news headlines around this name like it used to in the past. This one's more of a stealth mover, and I think that's probably how Jensen Huang wants to have it, at least for the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Kevin, over at the CBOE, your take on Nvidia.
You know, Nvidia is in this AI world, and sometimes they seem like the beneficiary of the bigger Capex spend. And then when Capex spend gets a little more responsible, they seem to sell off because they think the Capex may be cut to them, right? And it may be less than that. Listen, here's the thing that's most important. And I know this is more of the fundamentals than the chart, but Nvidia is getting cheap. And how is it getting cheap? How about compared to AMD? Nvidia's forward PE is 25. That's less than half of AMD. So what's going on here? They are clearly the leader in terms of AI chips. Yes, is a little competition coming in? Yes, there is. But make no mistake, they are so much cheaper than AMD, who they dominate. And by the way, late 26, early 27, the Vera Rubin chip is going to just increase their lead over these other groups. So I think from a valuation perspective, it's crazy to say this, but NVIDIA is actually getting cheap, Diane.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting perspective there. Especially, you make a good point with the outperformance we've seen AMD, and AMD has a test next week when it has to. As far as your expectations, are you focused on these Mag 7 names we're hearing from? Or are you more interested in some of the other names?
I'm really focused on the Mag 7 names, specifically the three leaders, really, NVIDIA, Google, and Amazon. NVIDIA is the toll collector, Amazon's the landlord, and Google is the advertiser in terms of the revenue stream. And so, basically, NVIDIA controls the AI highway. Every model, every data center, every hyperscaler runs through them. Amazon has the distribution advantage with AWS. So as AI moves from build out to deployment, they're really the ones collecting recurring revenue. And Alphabet is the sleeper. They're using AI as enhancing their search, driving engagement, and their cloud business is finally scaling. So you've got infrastructure, distribution, and monetization. And so that's why those three lead the Mag 7 today.
As they lead, what does that really say about the rest of big tech here? Are they stalling or are they just lagging?
Well, outside of NVIDIA, the rest of the Mag 7 have been lagging except for Google and Amazon. And so this is really a three-stock trade out of the Mag 7. And as long as we have these three generals carrying the load of the Mag 7, the market can hit new peaks and new heights. But if NVIDIA sneezes or one of them sneezes, the whole market could get pneumonia.
So do we think there's a possibility where Apple and or Microsoft could reassert themselves as the leadership here? Or have we just structurally shifted away from them in the markets?
I think we're structurally shifting away from them. Good on earnings is not good enough. We have to exceed expectations, use monetization from MI to enhance earnings and revenues, and those three leaders that I've mentioned have the best option to do that. Microsoft and Meta would be my next picks. And of course, Apple and Tesla are at the bottom of the Mag 7 at this time, as far as holding them as a trade, where in 2021 and 20, owning those 7 were all winner, winner, chicken dinner. That's not where we are today. We're in a selective tech environment. It's not all for one. You have to own the ones that are going to do well, or you're going to get left behind.
And Jeffrey, Alex Coffey and I were just talking about what you just said. Good is no longer good enough. We were looking at Corning, and I was talking about UPS even this morning. And what is better than good? How good do we have to be when the expectations are already so high, particularly for the 3 Mag 7 names that you say are prime for success here?
Well, I think really they've got to exceed guidance by a healthy margin. And so what would that be, 5-10%? And what we saw last quarter was Nvidia blew out guidance, Meta blew out guidance, and the market was in a sell mode. And even though their earnings were phenomenal, what happened? They fell on good earnings. And so, I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but the possibility is there because the macro environment is uncertain right now, and rates are compressing profits. As rates go higher here, we're going to see sell-offs like we have today. And so it's the old story, rates go up, market prices fall. And so, for those three leaders, though, that we're speaking about, Marley, I really think that you want to start buying the dips, dipping your toes in at this time. And so we may not see these stocks cheaper than this ever again in the next 6 months.
All right, so let's play devil's advocate here because you just mentioned the uncertain backdrop that we have right now. So I feel like this question needs to be asked. Of the 3 that you're focused on, which one is at the greatest risk of potentially disappointing? And what happens to the market if that happens?
Well, I think they're all 3 in the stack for AI, the leaders of AI right now in terms of the hyperscalers, with Nvidia providing the infrastructure. I think that the biggest one that would hurt the market the most if it sneezed or lowered guidance or had some type of negative tone to their earnings would be Nvidia, and that would cause a massive sell-off. And when valuations get stretched like this, Marley, the market really becomes codependent on movement forward on earnings only. And so earnings have got to be greater than expected, or we take a hiccup here because valuations are technically stretched. Now, in the Mag 7 minus Tesla, we're at 30, 35 times earnings right now on a forward basis. That's not too bad. I wouldn't say it's overbought, but we are pushing the boundaries of the norm here. And so one hiccup from any of the 3, and we could see the bubble actually get popped by that little pinprick because valuations are stretched.
So let's focus on Nvidia there because, you're not the first person to make the analogy that if Nvidia sneezes, the market gets pneumonia and there's a huge effect. And we've seen it before. If that happens, take me through the chain reaction, particularly because their earnings come at the end of earnings season. We won't hear from them almost for another month. They're May 20th. So we've got a few weeks here. Where do we see the biggest fallout if Nvidia falters in any way?
Well, I think in all of the hyperscalers, obviously, and in all of the infrastructure plays, in the broader market and energy. And so Nvidia is seeding every sector, every industry with AI technology to improve earnings and efficiencies. And so, it could crush the market, basically. I don't see that happening. I'm not a doom and gloomer here. I think the bullishness on Nvidia is very strong for the next 12 months. But if there was a curveball that came out, something went wrong, that would basically collapse the market. So Nvidia's valuations today are easily justifiable. We don't see that happening over the next 12 months.
All right. So with what you just said there with the bullish outlook, you expect this rally that we're seeing, despite the slight pullback today, to continue?
I do. And with the macro uncertainty, we'll see the market ebb and flow here. With potential for larger drawdowns based on energy, based on rates, based on geopolitical, and based on the Fed's posture. And so, with every new Fed chairman, we see the new Fed chair getting tested by the markets. And so he's gonna have to come right out of the gate here, Warsh, and set the tone. And hopefully he's going to be speaking and saying what the market wants to hear.
Let's get into the example trades. KG, let's start out with yours. What's your approach today?
Yeah, I want to kind of highlight though, AMD also has the CPU space. They have a bigger tangible addressable market in CPUs. That's why they were lagging at the start of this AI trade. CPUs are now in trend, which is why Intel as well as AMD is getting a little bit more love rather than Nvidia, which does have exposure, but not as much exposure. Look, if we have to do a bull and bear, I'm going to do the bear side here today. I don't mind doing that, even though I think the company fundamentally is looking pretty good. This is going to be an interesting one. It's going to probably make Kev's head explode when he looks at this one. But I'm actually looking at selling a call vertical here. This is actually looking at the May 15th expiration, selling the 190 call, buying the 195 call. These are in the money at this point. Doing this for a credit of $3.60. The max gain that I can actually have on this trade is $360. The max loss is $140 with a break-even point of $193.60. You need this stock to move, and it has to move to the downside in order for this to be profitable. Right now, if it stays where it is at right now, you will realize the max loss. The reason for this type of trade is if you wanted to get a downside look, but you don't want to be fully committed, and you want to put up a little bit of risk, this is a trade that does have a little bit more of a risk-defined structure. You could leverage some of the theta decay in the event that it does move in your direction and it gets closer and closer to expiration. But also, if it does move higher, your max outlay right now is $140. So instead of trying to buy premium, you're looking at selling premium because it's still relatively elevated on IV, and that implied volatility is elevated on the call side, not the put side at this point. So you've got to understand the risk going into it. Let's hear Kev try to, break this one down here for us, because the probability as you place it is not actually in your favor. Kev, what do you think about this trade?
Kevin, I've been in this business a long time, and it takes a lot for my head to explode. So don't worry, you're fine. You haven't done any long-term damage to me. Now, selling an in-the-money call spread is unique, right? Because you're selling something that, remember, a test we always do on this show is what if nothing happens? If nothing happens, similar if you were long a put vertical, right? You need the stock to move or you lose money. There's the difference between the long vertical and the short in the money vertical are similar in that case. So the risk is defined. You know what you have. You've got a little bit more of a short delta because you're basically selling 190, 195 is two in the money options. It's 360. You can only go to 5. And if it were to sell off towards 190, you need to get it below, what is that? 193.60 would be the break even on that trade. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, you may have a little exercise and assignment risk on some deep calls. That's one thing, but it wouldn't add risk because you'd be short the stock, long the 95 call. That wouldn't give you any more risk. There's no dividend, so there'd be no reason for that to happen. Now, with that, understanding the similarities between a short in the money vertical is very similar to a long vertical. You need movement. There's the only difference between those spreads. It's tomato. Everyone has their preference when it comes. If you would rather get a credit than pay a debit, this is how you can do that. So there is the bearish look, but you need, like I said, it to break 193.60. Mine was much more that you'll normally hear on our show, which is I'm modestly bullish. Nvidia has earnings on May 20th, so I stayed ahead of that with the May 15th, same expiration as Kevin. But what I did is I sold the 190, 180 put vertical. So now I have a put vertical on below the market. I sold it for $1.65 credit, so I can still have downside. And the difference between my spread and Kevin's is what happens if nothing happens. If nothing happens between now and May 15th, Kev's loses money, mine makes money. However, if Kevin's right directionally, he makes more money than I do. Right? If I'm right directionally, the most I can make is $1.65. Kevin can make $3.60 if you're right. There's the difference between the short put vertical and the in the money short call vertical, Diane.
Okay.
What is the number one thing? Is it basically justifying the big capex that we're going to be looking out for today?
That's one of the biggest questions we've gotten going into it is, are these companies going to raise their fiscal 26 capex guide? And the precedent from last year would say yes, because last year, as the year was progressing, the capex kept rising in absolute dollar terms. But going into it, we actually kept our capex forecast for Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta intact. We're right around where they guide it. And the main reason is they gave themselves wiggle room when they set the capex guide at the 4Q prints. And what I mean by that is Amazon exited 2025 at about a little over $150 billion of capex. They set their capex guide at $200 billion for fiscal 26. Alphabet gave themselves more room. They exited at over $110 billion. They got it to $180 billion at the midpoint. And Meta, it was a similar kind of story. They gave themselves $40–50 billion of wiggle room, which are big dollars and gives the companies an opportunity to have capex step up over the year. But yeah, so we don't think they're going to raise. Some investors have said, oh, maybe, kind of Alphabet and or Meta raises at the low end, but we're either at the midpoint or high end for all the guides. So, but that is going to be, a big one for tonight. And it's obviously a big night, as you alluded to.
Was yesterday instructive at all, John, for understanding how this market might react? Just a Wall Street Journal story about Sarah Friar at OpenAI questioning or discussing not being able to hit the internal targets and that being enough to cause a market sell-off. Does it feel like we're just at a very fragile moment that not getting close or even just meeting expectations is just not enough?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think tonight we're going to get some data points that are going to be impactful one way or the other for the stocks. And I would go to just talk about Amazon and Alphabet here, their cloud businesses. Another big topic will be, what is the revenue growth at AWS? What is the revenue growth at Google Cloud? At AWS, investors are looking for high 20s, low 30% revenue growth versus 24% in 4Q. And that growth is being driven by their AI stack and their core business. And one positive in CEO Jassie's shareholder letter from a couple of weeks ago, he said, AWS AI revenues at a $15 billion run rate, which is more than what we had modeled. So I thought that was instructive and helpful, but that's a key number tonight, AWS top line growth. And then Google Cloud saw massive acceleration in revenue growth in 4Q. And investors are looking, it grew 48% year over year. Investors are looking for mid 50s to mid 60% growth. So another big step up acceleration in Google Cloud revenue growth. And that's been driven by their AI stack, their leading model Gemini, their chips. And the other thing that's interesting about Google Cloud that's instructive as well is last year they signed more $1 billion deals than the prior 3 years combined, which gives us a little insight into the demand for their cloud business and also kind of governs what they're spending on CapEx because they're doubling CapEx this year.
Hey, John, I got less than a minute here, but I just wonder how much you're going to hear from these companies about efficiencies. The news, for example, from Meta to cut 10% of its workforce. Will that also be a defining feature?
Yeah, we'll get headcount. We'll get headcount. It's a little bit skewed because with the rising capex, you have rising depreciation, which we're going to see, and that's expected. Meta actually guides to a full year OpEx guide, so I think people are looking to see are they gonna cut that at the low end because of these headcount cuts. But yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what the margins look like.